Later today, US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania will receive a royal welcome from the Prince and Princess of Wales and then King Charles III.
The occasion has already been met with opposition. Last night, 4 people were arrested over the projection of images of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein onto Windsor Castle. There we go. For some minutes, they were able to get away with doing that, despite all the security around the castle. And later today, 200,000 people expected to take to the streets of London in protest at his visit. Well, we asked you for your thoughts on X. Is President Trump welcome in the UK? Almost 70% of you said yes. The US president is a welcome and useful guest
More
here.
than 2/3.
And 33% said no.
Well, we're joined now by the royal historian, Wesley Kerr, and by the president's nephew, Fred Trump III, who's live with us from Connecticut. Good morning, Mr. Trump. Well, we'll start with you. I was going to ask you if you're proud or embarrassed of him, but as you've described him as my atomic crazy uncle, I would suspect it's more of the latter. What's he like?
You know, Donald, I've known him all my life. He is, as I've liked to say, he was that crazy uncle at Thanksgiving time who seemed to take over the room, and he has continued that throughout his life. Listen, Donald and I always had a very good relationship. He and I disagree totally on policies and politics, but you know, your country and ours are such great friends. I wish him the best over there. I hope everything turns out well. I hope everyone stays safe and stays calm. And it's a great tribute to him and to our country for you to invite him and be so accepting.
But if I can just drill down into that description, because it does amuse me, why atomic crazy? Give us an example.
Well, I think you're seeing it right now. Maybe crazy is not the greatest word, but you know, some of the same issues that you're facing in the UK, high inflation, free speech issues are what we're dealing with right now. Unfortunately, a very horrific assassination was taken by a right-wing podcaster that was followed by many people. Has certainly stirred the pot in this country, and it's a shame. I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon. This is where we find ourselves.
Fred, I just want to ask, the free speech issue, of course, extended to protesters projecting this image of your uncle and Jeffrey Epstein onto one of the towers of Windsor Castle last night for a matter of minutes, stayed up quite a long time, clearly made a point. Do you think that President Trump is in any way embarrassed by images like that, will be concerned about protests? Does he care about that sort of thing? Or would he say, well, that's just people speaking out?
Well, he obviously doesn't like it. He doesn't like to be mocked. He doesn't like to be made fun of. I think he's changed over the years. It may bother him less now than it would have in his first term. It happens. But again, yes, this does bother him, but he'll let it go and move forward with what he needs to do over there, which I assume. I've heard you talking about trade is the number one thing.
Well, let's turn to Wesley Kerr. Let's put some historical perspective on this. I mean, we've just seen right now that 67% of our viewers in a Snap poll welcomed the visit. As a historian, you welcome the visit. Put it into some kind of perspective for us. How important is it?
Well, it's about the relationship between two great countries, really, and that's above all individuals, really. So obviously, next year will be the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and they were declaring independence against the United Kingdom, and they specifically named the King of Great Britain, George III, who is buried at St George's Chapel, whose favourite home was Windsor. And there's lots of lessons in British history for an American also buried there. Henry VIII, some think a tyrant. Charles I, executed in the centre of London. Also buried in the same tomb as Elizabeth II. George VI and Queen Elizabeth, who went, the first British monarchs to go to America in 1939, very, very famous visit where they cemented relationships just before the Second World War, perhaps the birth of the special relationship. Charles himself first met an American president, Eisenhower, 1959. He's met 10 presidents. He was feted at the White House with Princess Anne in 1970. So it's about
living history.
It's about relationships between nations, and it's interesting to hear Fred Trump's analysis. And of course, Fred Trump's grandmother, Donald's mother, was Scottish. Didn't leave until she was 18. So that's a very, very powerful thing. You know, so there's a special relationship for Donald Trump, and there's a special relationship between Britain and the United States, whatever the controversies, and controversies follow this man.
They certainly do. And hearing you recount so eloquently the history of Windsor Castle makes you realise why the president is not wrong when he says Windsor Castle is the ultimate in settings. But how embarrassed will our authorities be by the fact that on Monday a huge banner was unfurled in Windsor Great Park, you know, the image of the president, Jeffrey Epstein, and then those images were projected onto the castle?
Windsor Great Park is vast. We're a free country. These are expressions of democracy, really. And you know, the president purports to love liberty.
And free speech.
He perhaps is watching from Winfield House before the helicopters, the huge convoy, take off in a couple of hours for Windsor. The headline I most remember when covering big royal events was that the royal visit or the state visit was overshadowed by something. So isn't that the warp and weft of how things are?
Also, I just want to ask, Donald Trump describes the king in very admiring terms. We know he loves the royal family. Describes him as my friend. Do you think the king is completely neutral on friendships with political leaders, or do you think there's a chance they actually are friends?
I think the king is very warm when you meet him. I've been lucky enough to meet him many times since 1978. You know, firm handshake, looks you in the eye, empathises with you. Trump, and I think we got this from Fred, is, I'm sure, a very charming person, or can be extremely charming when you meet him. There's obviously another side. Charles's job is for heads of state to think, oh, this man is my friend. I'm sure that Macron greatly admires him. But they're similar age, Charles 76, Trump 79. They've both been famous for most of their lives. Divorcees, unhappy last marriages. I mean, so I'm sure that in the small amount of one-to-one time that they will have, because there are going to be lots of other, they're not having like a summit, they will get on well.
Well, let's go very quickly back to Fred, the nephew. Fred, just to finish off for us, why do you think your uncle is so fond of us Brits?
I'll give you a quick personal anecdote. At my grandparents' house, and you're absolutely right, my grandmother was born and raised in as far up north in Scotland as you possibly could. In the kitchen of my grandparents' house was a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II.
Yep.
So that greeted us every morning when we would be in my grandmother's kitchen. Let me say this again on a personal note. I guarantee Donald didn't know who the Blues were 10 minutes before he went to that event in Giant Stadium in New York. I welcome him whenever the time is right to see the Blues at Stamford Bridge.
Well, on that note, we'll call it a day. Thanks very much for joining us so early in the morning there. I think it's about 2:30 in the morning. Thanks for your time.
Wesley, lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Interesting day it will be. The carriage procession, I can't wait. But I think it'll be a closed, bulletproof carriage.
Well, it'll have to be closed. It's going to be pouring.
Within the confines of the estate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not many public
You might have to watch it on television with the rest of us.
Unprecedented ceremonial, we're told.